Let's jump right in. I know, everyone groans when they hear the word taxes. It is definitely nobody's favorite topic. But stick with me for this explainer, because we're going to time travel thousands of years into the past. We're going to see how this often dreaded system is actually an absolutely essential technology. It's literally the fundamental building block that built human civilization as we know it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why do we actually pay taxes? To really get the why, I want you to imagine a prehistoric world where this universal system just didn't exist. No tax codes, no deductions, absolutely zero government filings. Honestly, sounds like a total dream, right? But as you'll see, living without it meant living in a completely different, much smaller kind of world.
See, thousands of years ago, before taxes were even a glimmer in anyone's eye, people lived in very small, tight-knit communities. This was the ultimate era of self-sufficiency. Every single person, every family, produced exactly what they needed themselves. You hunted or grew your own food, you made your own clothes, and you built your own shelter. Everyone functioned entirely off the grid because, well, there literally was no grid.
But human beings naturally gather together, and they expand. As those small villages exploded into bustling cities and sprawling kingdoms, everything changed. Small communities? Sure, they could be completely self-sufficient, but those growing cities? They had massive new needs. We're talking walls for protection, roads for trade, grand temples, and armies for defense. Rulers suddenly faced a sheer logistical nightmare. A single ruler just could not provide everything for everyone all on their own. So they had to innovate. They created a system where people would contribute a portion of their own resources to support the growing kingdom. And there it is, the very first form of taxation. Now, it wasn't originally designed to just be a burden on folks. Rather, it was this inevitable, intensely practical solution to the complex problem of scaling human society. Basically, if you wanted the safety of the city walls, well, everyone had to pitch in to build them.
Let's trace exactly where this monumental shift started. The earliest known taxes didn't pop up in some modern parliament building. They appeared in ancient Mesopotamia, which we recognize as one of the world's very first civilizations. And right around the exact same time, ancient Egypt was busy pioneering its own highly organized methods of contribution.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that money, as we know it today, didn't exist yet. So instead of transferring funds, people paid their taxes using physical goods. We're talking grain, livestock, and other valuable items. Farmers would literally hand over a designated portion of their harvest. And if you didn't have goods, well, workers would pay their dues with manual labor, physically building the kingdom's public projects with their own two hands.
Ancient Egypt actually took this physical tax and scaled it into a brilliantly complex system. The government collected grain from farmers all across the land and stockpiled it in massive centralized government warehouses. This stored grain was essentially the ancient version of a state treasury. It was used to feed the massive workforce, the soldiers protecting the borders, and the officials who kept the whole society running smoothly.
Of course, with all this grain and labor flowing in, someone had to keep meticulous track of the whole shebang. As our source material points out, tax collectors became important government workers who recorded how much each person owed. This was literally the birth of early bureaucracy. These were the ancient accountants, ensuring the grain silos stayed full and society stayed perfectly organized.
Now, as civilizations continued to expand over the centuries, these systems really had to level up in a major way. Enter the Roman Empire. This was a massive turning point in history where human civilization scaled to an unprecedented size. To keep this giant empire functioning, taxes became one of the most advanced, highly organized engines of the ancient world.
Rome didn't just rely on a few local farmers, though. They built a highly sophisticated tax system that collected from two distinct groups. They collected from their own citizens, sure, but they also collected heavily from their vast, newly conquered territories. By tapping into the immense resources of those conquered lands, Rome was able to continuously fuel its rapid, sprawling expansion across entire continents. And where did all those resources go? Roman taxes funded things on an epic, empire-wide scale. They funded a massive and highly disciplined army, vast stone road networks that connected incredibly distant lands, and grand public buildings. These weren't just vanity projects for the emperors. These are the ancient equivalents of the essential infrastructure that we absolutely rely on in our own cities today. Let's move ahead and see how this builds. As we march toward the present day, a major transition occurred in how these systems actually functioned. First off, money finally replaced physical goods, like livestock and grain, as the main form of payment. With currency widely in play,
governments began collecting taxes on land, trade, property, and eventually income. As countries modernized, these tax systems continuously modernized right alongside them.
Fast forward to today, and we can clearly see the results of this modern tax evolution. Those ancient physical systems of dropping off a portion of your wheat harvest at a warehouse eventually transformed. They evolved into the highly complex, digitally managed tax codes that govern modern societies all over the globe right now. Looking at this macro-level history, it really paints a fascinating picture of human adaptation. Thousands of years ago, it was all about physical goods and manual labor. Then, centuries ago, money stepped in to replace those goods. In the modern era, we introduced comprehensive income and property taxes. And today, we use those aggregated funds to pay for incredibly complex public services. The vehicle of payment has just continuously adapted to perfectly fit the times.
So the crucial point is what we actually get for our contributions today. Just as the Romans funded grand armies and cobblestone roads, today taxes are collected by governments to pay for vital modern services. We're talking about healthcare, education, modern infrastructure, and public safety. We've simply swapped ancient walls and dirt roads for modern hospitals, schools, and emergency responders.
And that leads us to a pretty incredible realization. Although the methods have drastically changed, evolving from massive grain warehouses in ancient Egypt to digital currency and electronic filings today, the core idea remains exactly the same. The fundamental social contract between a society and its people hasn't shifted an inch.
To sum it all up perfectly, our source material gives us this defining thought. People contribute a portion of their resources so that a society can function and grow. That is the ultimate takeaway here. Whether it's a basket of wheat in ancient Mesopotamia or a percentage of your digital paycheck in the 21st century, it's the shared fuel that keeps the entire engine of civilization running.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. How might our tax methods evolve next as human society continues to expand? We went from grain to gold to digital transfers. As we look toward the future, maybe even to entirely new digital landscapes or multiplanetary societies, how will we pool our resources next? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the fascinating systems that build our world.